On April 4, 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty was signed. An attack against one would be an attack against all.
The establishment of the North Atlantic Alliance was also an act of optimism, an affirmation of the enduring vitality of Western civilization.
And I think it's a very bad thing for NATO.
Does Montenegro actually increase our national security?
I'll be casting my vote against expanding NATO.
Is NATO obsolete?
You have always been able to change as the world changes.
NATO solidarity is not only about funding, it's also about trust. And
every NATO country needs to be contributing 2%.
It's called burden sharing, and as you know, when I came, it wasn't so good.
The alliance needs to intensify its efforts to fulfill its commitments.
That target may not be enough.
I think we should first get to 2%.
I want to turn live in Brussels, where I'm joined by retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, a former commanding general of the United States Army in Europe. General, when you look at what's happened thus far, how is it going?
This is the nature of coalitions. For 5,000 years of military history, coalitions are tough. How did we get here? There was a time, not too long ago, when the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was universally seen as the cornerstone of our security. For 70 years, NATO has been the most successful military alliance in history. Today, that is changing. Many Americans certainly have serious questions about NATO. I'm retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges from Quincy, Florida. My new mission is to understand what Americans think about NATO and why. In my younger days, I was an infantry lieutenant stationed on the front lines of the Cold War in Germany. I commanded American soldiers at the company, battalion, and brigade level in the 101st Airborne Division. I commanded U.S. combat forces in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was the Director of Operations of Regional Command South in Kandahar, Afghanistan. In my last assignment, I had the honor of commanding the United States Army in Europe. At each point in my service, I learned powerful lessons. One of the most important lessons I learned is that America never goes to war alone. We have always needed allies. And when the chips are down, the United States needs the best allies in the world. And by far, the best alliance, the most successful alliance in the history of the world is NATO. What many people don't know is the key role that our allies have played in the past in securing America's freedom. People like General Pulaski, a Polish immigrant, who not only saved George Washington's life in battle, but also led the reform of American cavalry during the Revolutionary War and eventually died fighting for American freedom. General Pulaski was not the only European who crossed the Atlantic to help America fight for freedom. This statue honors General Kosciuszko, a Polish-Lithuanian soldier. There was also General Rochambeau, a Frenchman, along with his countryman, the Marquis de Lafayette, and German General Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben, all of whom are honored here in Washington, D.C. Today in the United States, it seems that many Americans are no longer familiar with NATO. Some question why America has a commitment to the alliance in the first place. Does NATO do enough? Does it do too little? If the Congress is responsible for paying for America's commitment to the alliance, I want to find out what they think. Senator, thanks for being here. Well, what do you want your constituents to know about NATO?
Well, I want my constituents to know that NATO has been virtually an unqualified success story when it comes to keeping the United States and keeping U.S. soldiers out of unnecessary wars. I want my constituents to know that only once has the collective defense provision in NATO been called, and it was when the United States asked our European allies to defend us after we were attacked on September 11th. And so when I hear talk about how Europe isn't pulling their fair share, I remind them that only one time has the collective defense provision of the NATO treaty been called into effect, and it was to defend us, and our allies in Europe answered that call.
Is NATO worth our investment? Is our alliance truly important? Many Americans are asking, why should they care about the fate of small countries that are far away? It's obvious what Washington thinks about our alliance. But I think we need a different perspective. I want to understand what people think beyond the Beltway. I've come to the real experts on NATO in the United States, to NATO's Allied Command Transformation Headquarters here in Norfolk, Virginia. Sir, why is it beneficial for the United States to be in the alliance?
I would say two things. First of all, we need stability because stability is key for prosperity, and the alliance brings stability. And the second point for me is that today we face very complex challenges, and these challenges as cyber threats, but not only as no boundaries. We need to address these challenges together. We are stronger together. It is the truth.
So what does America's next generation really think about the alliance? I've come to a small university outside of the Beltway to find out and to understand what students know and think about our alliance.
Kind of take for granted that we have international allies. Most people only think about international relations at all when things go wrong.
On both, the right and the left, there are particular characters saying, well, why don't we just live in Fortress America?
I think a lot of NATO's issues can seem far away or distant from the average person who lives in a NATO member country. The Warsaw Pact doesn't exist, so why should NATO continue to exist?
For where I'm from, I don't think most people know much about NATO.
Electrifying the western parts of Africa is more important than going to fight some people in the forest. We can't be just bickering about percentage points of military spending.
The threats to me and to my peers seems to be more about maybe the Middle East or China's growing hegemony in the region.
So the question is, 2% for us, right, is maybe much more worthwhile for that country than their 2% is to us.
You actually framed that extremely well. Why does it help us, regardless of whether or not countries are living up to their obligation? So the worst case for us would be we get into confrontation with China. That's why you need strong allies in Europe.
We should continue to apply pressure to have countries reach that 2%, especially countries that are able to. But at the same time, I think that the benefits that the United States gets out of NATO is greater than just the economic kind of side that they're putting into it.
I'm here in Smithville, Virginia, a small but vibrant town of about 9,000 people in the Tidewater region of Virginia. Let's see what they have to say.
The mainstream media and what people hear down here, they couldn't really tell you what NATO does now.
If the Congress and the President agreed, okay, we're not going to be in NATO anymore, we would still need all of those capabilities. We would still need the access. We would still need allies to help us do what it is we do. What a tiny little investment, and it's yielded such a terrific return on that investment of 70 years of peace on the European continent. It's America's contributions to the alliance is what keeps everybody together.
It's like having health insurance. You have health insurance so that, God forbid, you should need to use it. It's there.
Brendon, it works. That's it. We're part of it, and NATO, and it works. Like you said, 70 years, it speaks for itself. And hopefully will continue.
Until recently, support for NATO was unquestioned. The alliance was the institution that unified the West and won the Cold War. And it is just as essential today. Without NATO, we are weaker. We are so much stronger when we have friends. NATO makes the risk of conflict in Europe lower, not greater. NATO helps to make the United States stronger. And there is a powerful story to tell about how our NATO allies protect America, even if they seem far away from the United States. NATO is an alliance worth fighting for. I'm retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. I believe in Florida State football, my family, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We are stronger together.